What's up, everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. Today, I'm excited to have Will on with us. Will is one of our super hardworking clients, honestly, and we've been working with him for, let's say, like 9 months, almost 9 months now. And he just finished his summer 2026 recruiting process uh, quite early, actually, and was able to land an offer that he's really, really happy with. And so wanted to get him to come on here and just kind of talk to you guys about um, how he was able to do that. What were
Yeah,
some of
totally.
the obstacles that he had to overcome? And the point of this conversation is really just to give you guys some inspiration on what is possible, but also hopefully, there's some nuggets along the way that you can pick up and apply to your own process as well, and hopefully just help you guys move the ball forward. So,
Yeah.
with that said, William, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. And if you can, kick things off for us by just introducing yourself real quick, give people kind of like a high level of what your profile is, like what made it challenging for you as a candidate to kind of break into investment banking, and maybe
Yeah.
we start from there and we'll go through the rest of your journey.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to do that. And so, just wanted to say thanks for having me here. It's, great to be able to speak with you. And, definitely this program's been very helpful for me. For a little bit of background on myself, my name is William Green. I'm studying economics here at Northwestern. I'm a sophomore, just finished my whole recruiting process. It all kind of started a little bit more in just like 9 months ago when I didn't even know what on earth, like investment banking or any sort of thing like that was at all. Kind of grew up in a pretty small town, was going to be originally planned to be a doctor my entire life. And,
Mm,
growing up in that sort of like small town environment, I would have had absolutely no idea what the concept of investment banking would have looked like up until, I had a really great conversation with one of my classmates who was pursuing investment banking at my school. And that's what, drove me to be a little bit more interested in the field. And, I honestly, with a pretty low GPA after doing medicine here at Northwestern for my first 3 quarters definitely made it very difficult. I had a lot of conversations with my career center at Northwestern, and they kind of shunned me away from an IB, citing that my GPA was definitely too low in order to
mm,
be able to break in. And so I kind of went to other avenues. I didn't really like the idea of having you know a whole entire career set being able to be just kind of blocked off just because of a committing to medicine, not really loving it, and just like having an overall like kind of unfortunate, first year in terms of the grades. And so I kind of sought help elsewhere, and that's when I kind of stumbled across Wall Street Mastermind. And from here, things went pretty well. Was able to get accepted to the program and was kind of greeted with a lot of just like support there. Good. And the most important thing about the investment banking recruiting process is not going about it, because honestly, that's not that hard, especially for people that are actually going to be able to make it in investment banking. It's the most important thing is understanding what the scope of the recruitment process kind of looks like. And for
mm,
someone, with a small town background, having been pre-med my entire life, it honestly was very, very difficult to understand that. Like if you had told me a year ago that I'd be firing out 100 cold emails to random professionals in New York and trying to hop on calls with these people and try to get them to like me and kind of push for my resume up in a company, and that actually submitting my resume to a black box that was, these sort of like applications, that would have made absolutely no sense to me. It's completely alien. But once you start to understand and have the mindset of like, oh, this is how it works, a lot of things, come into place. And so that's was really helpful for Wall Street Mastermind, kind of just giving me an idea of, getting that network, expanding the funnel down, and then having those technicals come a little bit later. And so that's kind of what I ended up doing this past summer. I ended up getting following a lot of the advice, trying to build my network, especially in the beginning, building up those repetitions of having those amazing networking calls, getting to develop connections. And that was really, really great. And ended up landing an internship this past summer at a small, family office in Dallas, which was great. It's my first ever finance internship, and it was really cool because generally, your internships generally, it's very difficult to find internships nowadays. Everyone's talking about you kind of need experience to get an internship, and so it
yeah.
was really cool utilizing some of Wall Street Mastermind's principles to try to land those internships that were very coveted for freshmen to find, and so definitely was very helpful in that. And then, the reason why I joined Wall Street Mastermind, was because I was really gunning for this pre-professional club on campus at Northwestern that has a very strong pipeline of sending kids to investment banks. And so in
Mm,
terms of like, I knew that a lot of the kids had already been accepted through a like early insights program to this club beforehand, and without having been in that insights program, it would have made it significantly more difficult for me as someone who had just become interested in investment banking, hadn't been, hadn't come out of the womb interested in finance, to kind of break into this. And so Wall Street Mastermind was very helpful in, providing very just like consolidated technical guidance, and ended up getting into the school's club, which has a 90% acceptance rate into investment banks, has very good relationships with a lot of the banks on the street. And yeah, it ended up going very, very well. I really started ramping up the networking come, October, November, and whatnot. And that went very, very well. Started developing those really great connections with people on Wall Street, which was unbelievable, especially as a college sophomore. Ended up landing a sophomore internship at Societe Generale, which is a middle market investment bank, and it was really great, trying to target those sort of investment banks. And then from there, the momentum was kind of here, and things were going very well. Had a lot of great conversations. Started, and then the recruiting cycle really kicked off. During Christmas break, I one thing that was honestly so helpful for me, and this is really the kicker of what makes Wall Street Mastermind so helpful. I mean, to be honest, you can learn these technicals anywhere. They're kind of open source on the website. You can learn how to network anywhere. But the thing that makes Wall Street Mastermind so great is they give you an accountability buddy. And my accountability buddy, we would mock every single day for 2 hours, every single day during Christmas break, and no one else was able to deliver this sort of mentorship for me. And this is what really turned the tides. Especially another thing is that Wall Street Mastermind also has a database of previous interview questions. And so, when I was walking into my interviews, when I started getting all my first rounds after, following the whole Wall Street Mastermind, just like guidelines, every question that was thrown at me, I had seen before. And the reason why is because there was an entire interview database of previous students kind of like adding to this wealth of knowledge that allowed people to really just like get a hang of these interviews early on. And it wasn't just, sourcing from those 400 question guides that,
Yeah.
interviews already know that but they don't know that you have the database here. And that's so you get the resources of a really amazing, like the resources that Wall Street Mastermind provides is akin to the stuff that you would get at a Wharton in a pre-professional club there, where they have the interview questions. Like that's the thing that makes Wall Street Mastermind. So combined, especially in Christmas break, is when Wall Street Mastermind really helped me get to where I am, with my
Yeah.
accountability mentor that, mocked me whenever I asked him, just from one at on Slack, and having him ready to mock me. Helping me with my behaviorals, turning those down, doing all the technicals, and then also having just a whole database of technicals by which to source things was really what ultimately landed me my offers. And in terms of my recruitment process, definitely went very, very well. At every like one thing I learned early on was, really great, like Bo Bingham. I remember, seeing that and being like, wow, that guy got every single first round that he ever wanted, every single super that he ever wanted. And I'm happy to say that, for me, for my processes, things went very well. I had first round super days at Goldman, Morgan Stanley, Evercore, GTCR, KKR, Houlihan. Where else? I had a first round of PJT, and ended up, a lot, and Moelis LA. Where else? There were a couple others. Can't really remember them right now. But all to say is that I was able to get the job offer that I really wanted, which was Evercore M&A. Ended up actually turning down a lot of these other places who have told me to really just keep in touch with them for full time, for associate recruiting. And that just goes to show that, this whole networking thing that was kind of all started with the funnel networking of Wall Street Mastermind isn't just
Yeah.
about, you know, developing networks to get you a job. These are people that are going to stay in touch with you. And now that I'm going to be going in New York for SocGen this coming summer for my sophomore summer, these are the same people that are encouraging me to say, hey, let's go grab lunch.
Mm.
And keep me updated on how things are going. We're all really happy for you. And so, I mean, it all kind of started with, Wall Street Mastermind, and it ended with me getting an offer to an amazing investment bank that's going to be like a really great thing for me, my family, and a lot of the goals that I have in terms of supporting my family. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, that's a awesome overview. So thank you for that. There's so much goodness there that I want to kind of ask you questions about.
Yeah.
So let me just kind of try to somewhat go in order. But so you started out pre-med,
Yep.
right? And obviously pre-med super tough. And then and it sounds like you weren't super interested in pre-med. And so
Yep.
that probably makes it extra hard to just like do well in those classes. And so your GPA suffered. And I guess that was what for the first 2 semesters then, right? Like for your entire first year, you were doing pre-med?
Yeah. Well, so Northwestern operates on a quarter system. So there's three
Oh, right.
quarters, so the trimesters, and first 2 quarters, I was pre-med, absolutely hated it. Spring quarters, midway through spring quarters, when I realized I can't do this anymore, and that's when I ended up switching, like making the switch, kind of trying to look for other avenues of career paths and whatnot.
Yeah,
So yeah.
gotcha. So then like going to recruiting, like your GPA was like in the low threes, basically.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay. Which is like pretty tough for banking, right?
Yeah.
I guess like the first big question I have for you then is because we encounter a lot of students that have like GPA on the lower side too for various reasons. And a lot of times they're worried that like, hey, because of my GPA, this is not going to be possible,
Yeah.
right? For you though, it seems like I mean you probably had some similar concerns too going in, but
Absolutely.
and you're hearing your career center people from school telling you to basically just forget about it.
Yeah.
But then in the end, it seemed like you pretty much got I don't know if it was every single interview you applied for, but if not, it was almost every single interview, and it was all
Yeah.
the top firms, most elite firms, and a lot of the firms you named are elite boutiques who, typically are very picky about GP things like GPA,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and buy side firms like GTCR, KKR. Um, how did you, what do you think enabled you to get all these opportunities despite having a lower GPA?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it boils down to a couple things. It's kind of just like, I think for me, when people kind of tell me like you can't do something, it really makes me want to prove them wrong. And so, I remembered every single day the career center was telling me, you know what, you aren't going to be able to do this. Why don't you forget about banking? Maybe think about consulting. And if you're going to think about consulting, maybe just like scratch, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, any sort of names like that off and kind of shoot for more boutique things. And I heard that and I was pissed off. Like I was like, man, that's stupid. I think it's really stupid to make these sort of, sweeping judgments about a kid that's in freshman year, doesn't really know what he wants to do, and you're already taking these things out. And
Yeah,
the overall just like and so that obviously after that I was pretty determined, bound and determined to prove them wrong. And so essentially what I did was kind of just really hunkered down, took 4 summer classes alongside doing the internship, was just really trying to work hard, instill a lot of the mindset. Ended up getting, perfect marks throughout every single quarter since, brought myself up to a 3.5, which is kind of the cutoff. And then from there, because I switched out of medicine, one thing that, was actually very helpful and was featured in, the Wall Street Mastermind when they were looking through my resume was, why don't you just put down your major GPA? And that was very helpful for me. If you
mm,
put down your major GPA and you can kind of start fresh in a sense, kind of dilute the effect of, your pre-med classes. And now I'm studying economics. I have a 4.0 major GPA, and
yeah,
that really popped through on, the resume. And then also just like another important thing was, absolutely for me, the most important thing was networking. There is no way I would have been able to get where I am without the networking. I
yeah.
was shooting out 100 emails every single week. I had them all just like
For
coming.
how long?
God, it was ever since probably October since, for
Wow.
October to like December, just shooting out 100 emails every single week. I must have reached out to more people than there are, like more actual bankers than there are on the street, like at a certain point. Like and just like the whole time I was gunning for a sophomore internship, really wanted to lock that in. And then for before long, I ended up having, my summer internship, my fall internship, my spring and my winter internship that I did alongside my studies. Before long, my whole resume was stacked with finance activities. And before long, and you had a major GPA of a 4.0, which looked good. You had a lot of experiences there and a really reputable sophomore internship program that I was able to be going through here. And so in the end, like the GPA didn't really matter because it was all about the overall, holistic application view here, where you were looking at a guy that's super well, like I mean, just like able to speak and connect with the person on the other side of the phone. I mean, these people are working 90 hours a week. They
Yeah.
just want to have someone that's entertaining and normal to talk to, like that at a certain point they don't really care about GPA if the person on the other side of the phone is a bot. Like it's just
Yeah.
the truth. Like and then also coupling that with, finance experience, a true passion for the job. Um, all things that I kind of learned about through this program and how to pitch that. That's how you over navigate a GPA. And a lot of peers that are at my school are really struggling in recruiting right now. But even with, much higher GPA, much higher marks, and honestly, they're probably 30 times smarter than me. But like that's just how it goes. It's all about grit. It's about networking. It's about that. Your network is your most important power. So
It's you kind of nailed it there. Like it's not really about who is the smartest because
Absolutely.
we're not talking about you're not applying to be like a rocket scientist
Yeah.
or,
This is like eighth grade math. It's
yeah,
not.
well, yeah, exactly. Like it's you need some basic level of intelligence for sure, which most people have at this level, right?
Yeah.
Especially you go into a school like, Northwestern, but it's about all the other things that not everyone necessarily has. So like you
Yeah.
mentioned a few things in passing that I think people probably didn't pick up on and they just take it for granted. Like so, one, when people tell you you can't do something, for example, your career center people, you use that as motivation and
Yeah.
that pissed you off. But that is not a given because I see students all the time in that exact same situation who the way they react is like, oh, well, my career services person told me that there's
Yeah.
no way I can get in. So they must be right because they work in career services. So they know what they're talking about. And so I'm just going to give up. I'm not even going to try. I'm going to go like do the easier thing, right? Maybe go
Yeah.
for like boutique consulting firms. Like that is actually the more normal reaction,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so like that right there, before we even talk about like grit or anything else, it's like most people already lost at the beginning of the process
Yeah.
because they're not wired the same way, right? And so a lot of what separates like the winners from the losers in life is that it's like your mentality and your mindset and
Yeah.
not taking no for an answer. You said grit. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand too. Like one, you know what you want. You're not taking no for an answer. And then
Yeah.
two, it sounded like you worked extremely hard because doing things like taking 4 summer classes while doing an internship, like
Yeah.
that is that sounds like an insane workload. Like that's probably you
Yeah.
probably didn't have time for anything else over the summer, right?
Yeah.
And then like you going through every single, I don't know if you said every single, but you going through like almost all the questions in our crowdsource uh interview database. There's like
Yeah.
probably I don't know, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of questions and I haven't counted because there's so many, right?
Absolutely.
That takes a ton of work and sending out 100 emails every week for October to December, that's like probably close to 1,500 emails. Like that's an order of magnitude difference from what most people are doing, right? And
Right.
so it's just
Yeah.
like when you combine the work ethic and you combine the mindset that you have where you don't let people just tell you what you can or cannot do,
Yeah.
uh, there's almost no, it's very hard to not be successful if
Yeah.
you're doing all of those things, right?
Yeah.
But
Totally.
the hard part is like being willing to do all of those things because I think you're making it sound kind of like you're almost like kind of nonchalant when you're talking about it. You're making it sound like it's no big deal, but it's like actually doing everything you just said is a tremendous amount of work, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And so most people aren't willing to do that. And so like, look, I always tell everyone's like, everyone wants these jobs. They hear about like how high paying it is, so prestigious, amazing X opportunities, blah, 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 blah. Yes, it is all of those things, but wanting it is the easy part. And then like being willing to make the sacrifices and do the work to get there is a whole
Yeah.
different thing. Most people just want the reward, but they aren't willing to pay the price, right? And
100.
it's like if you are only willing to do what most people are willing to do, then by definition, you're just going to be like most people, which means you're going to be average, you're going to be ordinary, right? Being extraordinary or being exceptional means you're willing to do things that other people are not willing to do. And
Yeah.
if you are willing to do that, then you deserve an exceptional outcome,
Yeah.
right? And so I think like most people don't really understand that, right?
Yeah.
But obviously it seems like you did. So
Yeah. No.
that's amazing. I mean that is like by far the number one thing I want to point out from everything you just said is like
Totally.
um and a lot of people I think they get the wrong idea like oh like if I just sign up for something like Wall Street Mastermind then like it's
Yeah.
gonna
No.
be easy, right? Like this job's gonna be handed to me on silver. Like no, it's not, right? You still have to do the work. You still have to earn it. It's just
Yeah.
that a lot of people actually do all the work and they have nothing to show for it,
Yeah.
right? Like even if you do the work, it's not a given, but you have to do the work and then you have to also have the right
Do it
approach.
correctly. Yeah,
Yeah,
because like it's not about, I mean, obviously you have to work hard, but you have to work smart at the same time. And if you don't have guidance on how to do that, especially, coming from a background like what I was doing, I would have never known to send out emails to random people. I thought they would be like, why is this random college kid reaching out to me? But you know what? And the most important thing, the thing that got me into Evercore was developing a relationship in July with a senior managing director at the firm that,
Mm,
ultimately pushed for me, got me an early super day, helped push me through the offer. And, that's someone I'd never met before, ever. And it all just started with one call. And that sort of just like, honestly, that's kind of learning how to like sell yourself there is just something that me being like a natural introvert, like it's taught me a lot, how to be able to speak with people, how to be able to do this and that. It's things that you come that like I think they definitely extend far past, just this very narrow scope of recruiting. It's like life lessons that will teach you a lot, as you just continue to go through your career and through your personal life as well. So yeah.
yeah, for sure. You said you're an introvert. What, how did you overcome that
Yeah.
from a networking standpoint? Because obviously, to your point, networking is such a huge deal when it comes to how successful you are in recruiting. And I think obviously if you're introverted, that aspect of networking is a lot more challenging, right?
Yeah,
Even when
totally.
I'm talking to you now on camera, like you wouldn't get the idea that you're like super introverted because you seem really confident, really well spoken. Like, were you always this way, or like, if not, how did you evolve to become the way you are now?
Yeah, no, definitely. And growing up, honestly, grew up with a pretty strong stutter. And that was definitely something I had to deal with early on. And, the most important thing for me was just trying to fix that. I saw really great examples of people being able to public speak, whether it was just watching these random like TED Talks or leaders of clubs, as like in middle school or just my principal or whatnot, just these examples of really great speakers and just seeing the way they can, have that effect on people, have that effect on crowds. It's so important, and that's something I always wanted to cultivate. So from a young age, try to put myself into as many leadership roles as possible. Put myself into the soccer team. Try to get leadership roles in clubs and whatnot. It's just kind of about developing that side of me. And then when I honestly heard about recruiting, I was initially and the networking heavy aspect of it. Honestly, I was pretty scared at first. I was offering nothing to these bankers. They're working 90 hours a week. What on earth do I have to offer them? Like that's gonna make
Mm,
them want to talk to me, and like that's just the pinnacle of fighting the extroversion is just of fighting like introversion is just like what do I offer them? What will make them want to talk to me? And I think for me, for my first few calls, it was definitely very difficult, and just kind of. I kind of came in with, very canned questions to ask them, and it was pretty obvious. But, the most important thing was just doing reps, and it was all about opportunity cost. It's like, do I want to, you know, get out of my shell and get rid of the introversion and the anxiety that comes with it, or would I rather have this job and prove people that are telling me I can't do it wrong? I mean, it would just came
mm.
down to that, and ended up wanting the job more than wanting to stay comfortable. So
Ah, that last one is so good. There's a saying, it's like, because what you're talking about is like, do I want to stay comfortable more or do I want this job more? Right. And there's a saying that I really like, which is everything that you want but don't currently have is by
yeah,
definition outside of your comfort zone.
yeah,
Right. Because if you already have like if it's if you already have it, then by definition that would be like the status quo. That means it will be in your comfort zone, right?
totally.
And so like if you want this thing and you don't currently have it, then by definition you're gonna have to change something up, and you're gonna have to like it's like it would be more comfortable for me to sit on the couch and eat potato chips, but if I
Yeah,
want like washboard abs, I gotta get off my ass and go to the gym, and that's not comfortable. But it's the same
yeah,
idea, right? So it's just
yeah,
like
definitely.
which one do you want more, basically,
Yeah,
right?
that's my next.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that is really on point. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, so you also talked about, obviously a lot of, because I think we also talked to a lot of students that are, that go to, I mean, pretty much almost every school has this now, especially if you go to Target school, but like these feeder
Mhm.
clubs on campus, right? And they have like amazing placement rates into banking and whatnot. So you
Yeah.
talked about how you were trying to get into, I didn't know these clubs had early insights programs, dude. That's
Oh,
crazy.
it's ridiculous. This club had a higher view. That's how like honestly really cheesy because it's like a student run club, but like it's ridiculous. But I
They
mean,
use the actual higher view like
yeah,
software?
they use Spark higher.
Okay.
It's
Wow.
ridiculous. Like it's not that deep. I like, but whatever. You got to do what you got to do. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how it was.
So they have early insights for what, just like candidates that they really liked or who want to apply early. And then
Yeah.
you,
Now, those
you,
were people in freshman year, in the
yeah.
winter quarter of their freshman year. These are kids in March that have just gotten to the school, have only spent a couple months in college, are still, making friends, are still, calling their parents, missing home, and they're trying to rope these kids into investment banking, and they pull most of their class from this early insights program. And so that's why
Mm,
I knew, I literally am starting late. I'm switching out of medicine into this thing. I'm absolutely screwed because I wasn't in this early insights program. I didn't even know what investment banking was when they were recruiting for this. I didn't even know my this club even existed. And
yeah.
so like it's insane. Like if you think the recruitment process is early, the clubs that feed you to these recruitment processes are even earlier to prep you. And so
Yeah.
it's one thing that I was really concerned about and ended up, overcoming that obstacle.
Yeah. How many students get in each year, I guess, to these clubs?
There were 60 people in our class.
60?
60. Yeah.
Out of how many people that apply?
Um, well, I honestly don't know that figure, but it was definitely a lot. It's one of the more selective clubs on campus. And because the
Yeah.
way this club works is there are so at Northwestern, there's a couple other clubs that recruit in the fall, and they're more
Yeah.
like investing focused clubs. And these clubs are kind of like in a way like prerequisites to get into the investment banking club at Northwestern. And so if
Mm,
not in and if you don't start super early, like it's kind of like a cascading failure. And so if you're me and you don't know what investment banking is until the end of your freshman year, and you haven't been plugged into the whole finance culture on the school, you're like 4 steps away that you haven't done yet to get into the thing.
mm,
So that's kind of the environment, and that's very typical at a lot of schools that are really focused on recruiting kids for finance because they have to start early too to make sure that they're competitive and their clubs maintain those very strong acceptance rates.
yeah. And out of the 60 that got in, how many of them were not from early insights?
Probably like five.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So less than 10%.
Less than 10%. And most of those were transfers. And so like because it's like, oh, we haven't had these kids here, they're transfers. And so very difficult for someone like me who's been at Northwestern and got in outside of like the early insights program. So yeah.
Yeah. What do you think it was that allowed you to get in despite all of that? Was it just like you had to be really good at passing their interviews, or like what do you feel like we were able to help you with that, got you to overcome this obstacle?
I mean, the thing that EIP, like the early insights program at this club kind of taught you was the um the recruitment process of banking. And just the fact that I was able to understand, like the first thing they would ask me is like, do you have a sophomore summer? And for someone that, didn't go through, Wall Street Mastermind or a similar, early insights program, would look at them blank in the eye and be like, what are you taught? What is a sophomore summer? Those words make no sense to me.
Yeah.
Literally no sense to me. I have no idea what that means. But like, without skipping a beat, since I was familiar with the recruiting process, the most important thing is framing it. I was like, yep, I've got it. I've already got it secured. I've got a couple internships this right here. I know I haven't been in EIP, but let's like I know what I'm doing. It's just proving
Yeah.
that you know what you're doing. That was the most important thing. And honestly, like I actually networked with a lot of the kids on the executive board as well, and that was just something that I kind of learned from here, picked up from here too. Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's very weird for a kid to be reaching out to someone else, to like some upperclassman to try to get into a club. But like I think that this made me more comfortable with that. And it's like, yeah,
No, I think you are so smart about the way you went about it, because that's what I always tell everyone we talk to. A lot of people are like, "Oh, well, either I'm already in a club at school, or maybe like I have this club at school that I can try to get into, and so I'm gonna wait to see if I get into this club, and if I don't, then I'll use Wall Street Mastermind. But if I do, then I don't need
yeah.
it." And it's
For a
like
reason, yeah.
they're not mutually exclusive, first of
Mm.
all.
Like
Uh,
completely honest, like the reason why I joined Wall Street Mastermind was to get into this club because
right,
like that's why
right,
I joined. And
right.
then
Because yeah,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
And then like in the end, like it wasn't the members of the club that I was reaching out to for mock interviews during Christmas break. It was Khalid, my my mentor,
Yeah,
like here from Wall Street Mastermind. And so
yeah,
it's not like once I joined the Northwestern club, I just like went radio silent from you guys. Like it was having two ways of support here that, really helped me out here. Like and that's just, that's I think that's what was so cool about it.
yeah. I mean, one thing is you can, given how competitive investment banking is, you can never have too much help. right? Like there's no such like even for
No.
someone who in hindsight got the type of interview opportunities and the type of offers you got, that was in hindsight. Going into it, no one is sitting there feeling like ultra confident that, oh, I'm for sure gonna get all the top offers. Like you just don't
No.
know that, right? Like
I
it's
thought I was going like I was like happy with a boutique, like random like regional one, especially coming with my GPA, coming out with, my background being so behind, and I got every offer I wanted, got every single, place I wanted. And it's just like, yeah.
yeah, and it's like it's not just about when I say you can't. There's no such thing as having too much help. Is because you can't think of the outcome as just like a binary outcome of did I get an offer or did I not, right? It's like it's along a spectrum. It's like, okay, you got an offer, or maybe you could have gotten an offer, but could you have gotten an even better offer, right? Like you getting Evercore M&A, that's like basically as good as it gets.
Yeah.
It would not have been the same if you just ended up at, I don't know, like a middle market bank or even a boutique
I
bank, like
totally.
you were saying, right? It would be a huge difference. And so, like, it's not just about getting in, it's like, how do you get as close to your ceiling as possible? And then the
Mhm.
second thing is the way these clubs all recruit, the reason why they're asking you, like, hey, do you have a sophomore summary? It's like, they're just trying to take all the best kids because it helps with their own track record. It helps with
Yeah, exactly.
their own placements. And the way they model their recruiting, to your point, they have a higher view, whatever. They actually just model their recruiting process after how the actual banks recruit,
Yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
they're trying
You
to find
know
the
how
people
they
that are
recruit
going they're trying
life
to find the
fit.
people that would do well in the real process.
Yeah,
Um, of course, like the real banks are still going to be way harder to get into. Like if you look at Goldman Sachs, last year over 315,000 applicants for summer internships, they took 4,000, sorry, 2,700 people.
yeah,
That's 0.9%, right? JP Morgan had almost 500,000 applicants and they took 4,000 interns. That's 0.8%. So I'm not saying it's the same, but I always tell people it's like if applying to the actual banks is like going for varsity, applying for these clubs is like going for JV,
yeah,
right? And the way our program is designed, we're training you to be good enough to apply for varsity.
yeah.
And then so if you just take everything we teach you and then you try to go and get onto the JV team,
Hmm.
it's gonna be no problem, right? Because you're good enough for varsity, you're definitely good enough for JV. So like
Yeah, yeah,
that is the fact that you thought about it that way, I think is also different from how a lot of people think about it, which one thing I'm starting to notice about you just through this conversation is that the way you think is actually different from how a lot of people think. But again, that is
yeah,
probably why you got the amazing outcomes that you had, right?
yeah.
Which is different from everyone
I'd say
else.
so. Yeah,
Um, one thing I forgot to ask you earlier, which I usually ask earlier on, is was Evercore your first offer, or was that just the offer you ultimately went with?
it was my first offer.
Got it. So how did
Yeah.
it feel? How did it feel when you got the offer?
Great, honestly, really awesome. But at a certain point, and this is really crazy. I felt like I had done every single step right, and it's just with the help of you guys, I kind of walked out of the super day like almost knowing that I got it. I had nothing I had ever done with my questions I had been confused by. I had seen every single one of these questions before. I had the help. I had literally been asked these questions before. Every single time they asked me something, it was almost like I was a robot, churning it back at them and just honestly trying to have a conversation. Like these are people at the end of the day, and if they like you, it doesn't matter. And then like I'd already seen everything. Like I came out of that, and I essentially knew. Like that's what the greatest feeling is just like being over prepared. So then when you go into a Evercore Super Day, they fly you in, and you're sitting in an office, and you're having managing directors. People that have been in the industry running billion-dollar deals come at you, ask you questions, and you sit there and your heart doesn't start beating, your palms don't get sweaty, and because you've done it all before, you've been mocking with, your accountability partners in Wall Street Mastermind all Christmas break long, and it's like 20 times easier. Like life is good. You come out of it, and that's how it felt. It felt great, but I kind of knew it. A lot of anticipation kind of just built up. So yeah,
Yeah. How many mocks did you guys do?
like every night, like of Christmas break, like it was
Wow.
insane. Yeah, no, and that's just like something that was really special.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. That's
Yeah,
awesome. So I guess just a couple more questions, because we already touched on a lot of it, but what did you do any prep on your own regarding banking prior to joining Wall Street? Because you joined in like May.
yeah, no.
which I think was like May of end of your freshman year, basically. So you hadn't done anything. So like this, basically everything you did in Wall Street Mastermind was like the first time you actually prep for banking, essentially.
Yeah,
Okay, got it. So you came in as like a complete beginner. Um,
completely.
was it did you have to like talk to your parents about joining this program? Was that a tough conversation? Were they supportive or like did you really have to like convince them? What was that like?
Um, I mean, not really. It was just like, I mean, I talked with my dad a lot about it, and he was just like, they have a good track record here. They kind of defend themselves online, and there's something to be said about that, and that's what makes it cool. And they have testimonies, they have this and that, and ended up working out. So,
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so your dad was really supportive. That's great. Did what would you say? I mean, you kind of touched on some of this already, obviously all the mock interviews and whatnot. Um, if you could pick maybe just one or two things that were
yeah.
like the most impactful things from your time in Wall Street Management, like whatever made the biggest difference for you, I feel like, or you feel like what would you say those things were?
Um, I would say for me, networking is the number one thing. That's the most important thing. You're developing connections with people. That's absolutely the number one thing is networking. The second thing is reps. And the only way you can get reps is by actually having like the questions ahead of time. And that's those are two things I learned from the program. So
Yeah. I mean, these elite boutique interviews that you went to, like Evercore, were like they're known to have much harder questions
yeah,
than most places, right?
yep,
Um, I mean, the types of questions that they asked, obviously you had our interview questions database, so nothing really caught you by surprise.
yeah.
But for most of the people in the audience who are most likely just reading like 400 questions guide, memorizing those answers, how different were those questions, I guess?
From foreign IB guides.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like in terms of difficulty, you go to the like candidly, the advanced section of your 400 IB guides is probably going to be the same difficulty of the thing, but what the thing is the 400 IB guides lull you into a very false sense of security. It's like, oh, once I've done all these advanced questions, these are all pretty hard. I didn't know them until, I've spent time, rereading the guides, I've memorized them, and now I can take anything. And
Mm,
that's the problem. People think that, just because they can memorize a set of guides is they're going to do it. I mean, the problem is everyone else is doing that too. So if a bank is giving you more questions, that like elite the elite boutique questions that I got were different, but you're sourcing them from like the same database. Like you can only make so many technicals. And so like at a
yeah.
certain point you do enough reps and you have like actually sourced interview questions that aren't just like random guides that are 10 years old, thrown at you, then life is good. So
Yeah, and you're not, and I mean, you're also not like just memorizing answers to these questions in the database. You're like actually understanding them, right? Like
yeah,
you're practicing with them. If there's a question that you don't know how to answer, which I'm sure there were plenty of those, you would just come and ask, and then like one of the coaches or someone else in the program would
yeah,
help you solve solve the problem, and then you would understand it. And next time you see a similar question, you basically know how to do it, right? And
yeah,
so.
totally.
I think it's that feedback loop, and doing those, basically like doing those reps, like you said, and getting feedback to plug as many gaps as you can before the
Yeah,
actual interview start. That's that's basically what's gonna make you successful, right? It sounds like you were just like extremely prepared, basically. So like by the time you had to start interviewing, no matter what they threw at you, it didn't really matter.
yeah, no, totally. That's definitely what I felt like, and that's definitely the feeling that I wanted to have coming into January, coming to those first rounds, where I would not be too nervous. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Who was the first person you told when you got the offer?
Oh my gosh. It was actually it was my girlfriend. Like she was literally there like once I got it, and it was awesome. So super happy about that. And then
Yeah.
I also actually one thing kind of on the networking perspective as well. I actually told the analysts that I had gotten super close with during the process. So like for a bit of background for Evercore specifically, it all kind of started, with calling a senior managing director out of the blue that went to Kellogg, which is Northwestern's grad school. And he kind of helped plug me into the process, kind of told me about banking, help literally organized me to have like a trek down to Evercore Houston's office where he was based in and
Mm,
let me, tour the office, meet the bankers and everything, and it went really, really well. And as I continued to develop that relationship with this guy, he came up and he was the one presenting about Evercore at Northwestern. He ended up renting out a restaurant in like in our college town, brought all the people from the info session over. We all ate chicken wings, and he reconvened with him. He ended up giving me a call in November, said, "Hey, I really liked you. I was a huge fan of you. Let's grab lunch." We grabbed lunch when because he was in
Wow.
Chicago, met him there, and we just really hit it off, continued to hit it off. And before long, he was essentially the one, plugging me into the New York process. He was the one that reached out to New York analysts and told them to talk to me.
Wow.
Introduced them to them. I had, great conversations with him. By this time it was like December, and I had already pretty much perfected like the networking strat. At this point, he was kind of like I was having, 90-minute coffee chats with some of these analysts. We clicked really well. And then when I ended up getting the first round to Evercore, it was really early. They ended up accelerating me just because they liked me. And for that week before I had my super day, the
Hmm.
analysts from the Evercore team actually hopped on mock interviews with me, like three
Wow.
hours, like a day. They're working 80 hours a work week, and they were taking 3 hours a day to just help me out and help calm my nerves. And so like the second people I called were them, like, and they were thrilled. And and then also like the senior managing director, like, and it's awesome. And have been actually have a group chat with them, so it's like awesome. So, yeah,
Wow, that is crazy, man. That I just want to say that is not normal. For a senior managing director to proactively reach out to you months after you initially connected, ask you to grab a meal, plug you into another office, not even the office that he's trying to recruit for.
yeah,
Like he's genuinely actually like just trying to help you. He's not even being selfish, like,
yeah,
just looking out for himself or whatever. And then for
yeah,
people to spend the amount of time they spend helping you, like when they're so busy already, I mean, that's crazy, man. They really you could tell they really wanted you even before you actually interviewed. That was like
yeah,
they rolled out the red carpets.
yeah,
What is, I have to ask this for our audience because I know they're wondering after hearing this story, like, how are you able to have such long conversations with these analysts? You said like 90-minute coffee chats, and we're like,
yeah,
most people I feel they struggle to fill 30 minutes, right? We're like,
yeah.
they don't know what to talk about or what to ask. How are you able to talk to them for so long and make it, I mean, sounds like it's pretty effortless, right? I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's one thing that I've really have picked up just kind of myself from, doing a lot of networking, just it's all about reps, first of all. And second of all, it's realizing that the person on the other side of the phone is working 80 hours a week. And, you know, at a certain point, like they don't just want to hear about finance stuff and they don't want to, at a certain point, they know that you know what the job is. They just want to have a good conversation with you. And if they can have that, and if they're pleasantly surprised by some kid hopping on the phone and, cracking jokes, being like, oh, hey, like we shared the same interest in high school. Like what, like, tell me about that. Love to hear about that. Like for one of the examples, one of the analyst that I spoke to was literally on like an Olympic team for a sport, and she had that on her LinkedIn. And I asked her about it, and I was like, "Hey, I'm sure you get asked this all the time." And like I saw that you were on the Olympic team for the sport. That's super awesome. I'd love to hear more about that. And she paused for 3 seconds. She goes, "You're actually the only person that's ever asked me that ever." Which is unbelievable because it just shows you how misguided people are in networking. People get hop on the phones and they think that they think they're super smart because they know what a DCF is, or they know like what deals like they are, and they just start firing banking questions at you. But the most important thing is just connecting on the other side of with someone on the phone and making them be like, what, I could envision this kid in the bullpen with me at 3 a.m. and we're
Mm.
working together and we're actually genuinely just friends. And so someone that actually, cares about me is not just, trying to use me for a job, and displaying that like authenticity, that honesty is the most important thing in towards of creating those connections. And it definitely, a lot of people just don't really do that, or don't have the like or aren't really trying to do that because they view it as very transactional. And so that's the most important thing that I was able to kind of get out of this. I was starting with writing those canned questions and just having those and trying to demonstrate that I know what the job is and understanding that. But the most important thing is connecting with someone on the other line, making them smile, making them happy. And that's what's really in the end is going to put you above other people is, if they like you. It's really simple.
That is so good, man.
Yep.
I this interview is going to be so helpful for the people that hear it. I don't know how
Yeah,
many people it's going to be, but it's you've given so many just super good nuggets. But you're absolutely right. It's like, and that is a wild story, by the way, that no one ever asked her about that because
yeah,
the easiest way to make someone like you as a person is to show genuine interest in that person.
yeah,
Like that's it. You know, it's like
yeah.
so
It's
like
not
if
rocket science at all. It's literally like basic
yeah.
nature.
And I think a lot of people lose sight of that and they forget that you're actually talking to another human being. They're
Yeah,
so focused on like, how do I say all the right things? How do I get them to give me the referral, whatever. It's like,
yeah,
well, the more you worry about all of that and forget about making the main thing the main thing, which is just making the other person like you, like
yeah,
the less likely you are to actually get the thing that you came for, right? Um,
yeah, totally.
that's amazing. I was going to ask you for, and this is usually the question that I end on, but I usually ask for your best piece of advice that you have for people who are either still recruiting or about to go through recruiting. But
Yeah,
I feel like you've already given so many good ones. Is there anything else you want to share in that regards
yeah,
for people that, you know, are still going through the process or about to go through it? Um, and if
yeah,
not, that's okay too. But because I feel like you've
yeah.
already
Sure.
shared so
No,
much.
I'd love to just. I think just reiterating the point that and in the end, at the end of the day, it's very easy to be as a kid that doesn't really know the process to kind of wait for the application deadline to open up and you click apply now, you apply with a really great looking resume, and at that point you kind of think that you've done everything. And for someone like anyone else that isn't familiar with the process, because it's absolutely alien trying to explain this whole process to anyone else that hasn't done it before. It just doesn't compute. Like my parents still don't understand like why I'm hopping on the phone with random strangers every single day. It makes absolutely no sense until you
Oh,
do it. And the most important thing to realize is that these aren't black boxes. That resume, it's being read by a pair of human eyes. And let's say that those eyes have heard your name a couple times from analysts. That goes farther than just the stats on your resume, the experience on your resume, because in the end they all start to blend together. Everyone's using the same format, everyone's using Garamond, like it's all the same. Like it's like there's nothing really that different. It's a bunch of kids that are interested in finance that probably like golf and running, and it's like at a certain point things become pretty cookie cutter. But the most important thing is understanding that have people been talking about you in that firm?
mm,
And is that HR person ultimately going to be like, you know what, this kid's taking the time to get to know our people, not just be like a bot and talk to and just do that. Like the most important thing is understanding that a firm is a collection, is not just a name, it's a collection of people. And if you connect with enough people at that place, they view you as part of the team even before you're even there. So yeah.
yeah, for sure. Oh, that's really good. Um, let's end on that high note.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are still with us, if you are
Get the AirPods.
listening to all this and this all makes sense to you and you want to maximize every advantage you could possibly have,
Yeah.
and you want to just, regardless of whether you're starting early or maybe you feel like you're starting late, um, it doesn't matter, right? Like if you can, obviously you got to have the work ethic, but if you feel like you have the work ethic but you also want help to be able to not just work hard, but also work smart, then I want to encourage you guys to reach out. We can book a call with our team. Um, the first step is like, we'll just have a conversation with you about where you're at in the recruiting process, what your goals are, what kind of banks you're trying to get into. What do you feel like you need help with? And everyone's going to be slightly different, but you know, whatever that may be, we'll discuss, what we think needs to be done, or what we would do if we were you. And
Yeah.
if you want to take that and go and run with it on your own, absolutely feel free to do that. If you want us to help you with that, um, just to make your life a little bit easier and also give you even better outcome for the pretty much the same amount of effort that you're going to be putting in regardless, then we can do that as well, right? So if that's something that you guys are interested in, you can go to www.wallstreetmatchmind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmatchmind.com/apply. And we look forward to talking to you. All right. With that said, Will, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on here today. This is amazing conversations. I've done so many of these interviews, but I gotta say this is one of my favorite ones to date. Definitely in recent weeks at least. I just did three this past week because like offers are starting to roll out for
Yeah.
Wall Street Mastermind clients, and This one's been amazing. There's just been full of really, really useful insights that I think
Yeah, I
will
appreciate it.
really benefit our audience. So just thank you, appreciate you for sharing, and then huge congrats again on an
Thank
amazing
you.
outcome, obviously, and obviously well deserved. So super happy for you and excited to see what you accomplish both this upcoming summer at SocGen as well as next summer at Evercore and really beyond that. So
Yeah, total.
yeah. Cool,
Awesome. Thank you.
man.
Appreciate
Well,
it.
guys, we're gonna wrap it up here and thank you guys for tuning in. Um, we will be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. And until next time, all right? Cheers.